Good morning, everyone. This is Pastor Cathy. I welcome everybody from Facebook Live out there, from the Life Point Church, from Rio Linda in Alberta, and also from our sister church in Woodland. And I'm just glad to see everybody here today. So, today we're going to continue with the story of Joseph. So, we'll do a little review right now. And of course, we want you to have your Bibles out if you have them. So we're going to be in Genesis 38 for the review part of it, and then we'll go into 39 for that. Actually, I take it back. That was 36 and 37. Okay, so 36 and 37 talks about Joseph and his brothers. And we talked about how Joseph was the favorite child of his father, but also that he was the 11th brother of 12. And we talked about how can you even imagine having 11 other brothers or sisters in your house. I mean, look at my house or look at your house. Can you imagine if you had 11 brothers or sisters living in there? How crowded would that be? It would be incredible. It would be just crazy, crazy, crazy. And so the brothers didn't like him. We talked about how angry they were at Joseph. And there wasn't really a true reason given for that. I, we talked about jealousy and maybe a little bit of pride would be in there. And they were angry because he was the favorite. And I asked you if in your family, if you have brothers and sisters, whether or not you thought you were the favorite or someone else is the favorite. And I heard from a couple people, but I've asked that before when we've talked about Joseph in regards to that. In our family, they sometimes think that Miss Sarah is the favorite because she got to do things that her older brother and older sister didn't get to do. But time change and responsibilities change and parents change at the same time. So they were going to, Joseph was sent by his father to go and check on his brothers and check on their sheep. And so he traveled for however long he had to until he came to them. They saw him coming and they just got angry again. They were angry because, one, Joseph had a relationship, and we have to assume that the whole family had a relationship with God. But I'm thinking that Joseph was probably a little bit closer. And that can be the same in your family. Maybe one parent or brother or sister or yourself is really more into the knowledge of the Lord and building on that relationship to the Lord. And that happens a lot. When I first started attending church, all three of my kids were very much into the Lord. And right now, they may not be as much as I would like them, but I can't decide what their relationship is. But Joseph had dreams that the Lord gave him, and he would interpret those dreams. And I remember he had one where he was the one that was the tallest in the field of stalks of grain and that everybody had to bow down. And that's where a little bit of pride might have come into, and definitely could see where there'd be some anger, because here he was, 11th and 12th, so he wasn't the youngest, he wasn't the baby, but in their eyes, he just felt that that was what was going to happen, and God had given him these dreams. And as we learn farther, as we're going through Genesis, that God does help Joseph a lot in regards to dreams and helping him to interpret those dreams for others, for fellow friends, for a king and a ruler, and that there is always a reason why God does what he does, says what he says. He keeps all his promises. And Joseph just relayed what God told him to relay. And you can't do that. He was following God all the way. You can't pick and choose which part. Oh, I'm going to pick this one, but I don't like this rule in regards to my relationship with God. So I'm not going to pick that one, and maybe I'll do this one sometime. You have to be what we call all in, okay? And I can give you a great big long word for that, but we'll just call it all in right now for the Lord. And you want to do what's going to not necessarily make him happy, but will make your relationship with the Lord grow, because that's what's important. I mean, it's nice to make him happy, but he really wants you to understand why you may go through some of the trials you go through, or friends or families do, but not, but also to understand that you don't really have a whole say other than to follow. And that's what we call faith, is to follow the Lord no matter where he leads you. And if you truly believe the Lord is having you say something or asking you to do something, then there's a reason for it. And this is what Joseph did. And so he went out there, and the brothers, as he's approaching the camp in his fancy coat and colors, he the brothers decide that they are going to kill him. It seems pretty drastic, but in the Old Testament times, there were a lot of drastic things that go on that I can't even imagine doing right now. But instead, one of his brothers saved him and said, "Let's not do that. Let's throw him in the pit." And so they threw him into the pit. And then, as time went on, how were they going to tell the father about what happened and trying to make up a story and everything else? Then this caravan comes by with trading their wares and their goods and their oils or whatever it is. And they pulled Joseph back out and they sold him for 20 pieces of silver. Not a lot of money to us, maybe, but to them it was a lot, and that was split among the brothers. But they still had to figure out what they were going to tell the father and what had happened. And so this is where we start today, and it's a little gruesome sometimes, but it's reality and it's scary being out there sometimes. But they sold him for 20 pieces of silver. They took his coat away from him. And then they covered it in blood and took it back to the father, and they told their father a lie. Now, they all had to be in cahoots with it. So all the brothers understood what was being said and what was being done. And so that's really scary that way, that all of these were taking the step of doing that. But guess what? God always has a plan. It says Joseph's brothers are meant to do harm, but everything turned out okay for Joseph because really he was supposed to die. So now he's sold into slavery. And we may not think slavery is really a great idea, but the Lord had a plan. And as we read farther into Genesis, into 39, then that's when we remember that God always has a plan. And so there's a gentleman named Potiphar, and he ends up buying Joseph when they go into the slave market, which is usually in the town square somewhere, and they put the people, the man or the woman or the husband and wife, or sometimes even a husband, wife, and children up there, and they auction them off with the person having the most money to do that. And we've done auctions in our church and during our classes, like when we do it for the fruits of the Spirit. Which fruit of the Spirit do we want? And we all have money, and we try to see if we can buy it or not, which we can't really do, but it shows what you think is important that you should have, at least at that time in your life. So Potiphar sees something in Joseph, and we don't know what it is. We don't know what kind of relationship Potiphar had with the Lord, but we know that Potiphar ended up buying Joseph, and he brought him into his home, and he started working. Now, Joseph, he could have been mad, he could have been angry, he could have said, "I'm not going to do nothing for you. This is not fair. I need to go home to my family and see my father." But he didn't. He did what he was asked to do as a slave. And as he did that, Potiphar began to see there's something different about Joseph. Didn't know for sure. Doesn't go into a lot in the Bible that I have, but he says that he sees something different. That's the way we should be. We talk about being Christians and how we should not be angry and we need to forgive and to have trust and faith and not to be selfish about things. And it's hard. It's hard for all of us. So I don't know if I would have been like Joseph had to be like the number one in regards to all slave. And maybe he made suggestions to Potiphar that made it good for Potiphar and made him a more wealthy or more organized. I don't know, but it just finally came to the point that Potiphar had Joseph be part of his family, which was a huge thing back in these times. But not only that, but he was the boss over everything. And Potiphar didn't even worry about anything because if Joseph was in charge, he knew Joseph was going to take care of it. And Joseph was fair and just. And it was a blessing, not only for Potiphar, but it was a blessing for Joseph at the same time. And that's what God does. He can bless no matter what situation we're in when we think the end of the world is coming or it's not fair. I mean, how many times I've been around children and adults and teenagers where I hear them say, it's not fair, or but it's not. Why do they get to do it? But Joseph didn't do any of that. So God had a plan, and he was watching and taking care of Joseph. And by doing this, Joseph was able to bless Potiphar. And because Potiphar was being blessed, then Joseph was being blessed too, because he wasn't considered to be a slave anymore. He was actually living in Potiphar's kingdom or his house, and he had nice, clean clothes, and he probably had food, a lot more than some of the prisoners or slaves did. But there was a change in him, and that's what was important. The Lord was with Joseph. Now, he could have gotten, like I said, really mad and stuff. And we don't know for sure if he ended up forgiving his brothers at that point or if he prayed for his brothers, because it doesn't really say at that time. Well, we know later on there are some changes that go on in regards to Joseph and his relationship with his brothers and eventually with his father. But as time went on, Potiphar's wife wasn't very nice. She didn't like things that were going on with Joseph. And she was attracted to Joseph, like boyfriend, girlfriend. Ew. Okay. But she was married. And Joseph honored Potiphar. And he honored their marriage because that's what we all should do. And so there was no way he was going to do anything with the wife. And this made the wife mad. He continued to take care of and honored Potiphar as he should. Probably treated him as even a friend, one way or the other. So we wouldn't steal something from a friend because that's what friends don't do that for each other. But it just continued and continued at such a point that she ended up making up a story and she ended up lying and saying that Joseph had done something. Now it's amazing to me that you see this relationship between Potiphar and Joseph, just like you and your best friend. So think of your best friend. And I know from talking to some of you, Miss Darla and Miss Sarah, that sometimes your best friends don't always treat you right. But you know that they're best friends, and maybe you're mad or angry at them for a day or two, but then you're best friends again. And so I just look at Potiphar and Joseph that even though they worked together, they were friends. But as soon as Potiphar's wife told this lie about Joseph, Potiphar immediately believed his wife. And poor Joseph was hunted down and grabbed, and he was thrown in jail. Doesn't talk about a court, doesn't talk about a jury, him having a lawyer. Of course, they didn't have a lot of that stuff back in the olden days in the Old Testament. But he immediately believed the lie that was told. Now we can say, how do we know that he believed the lie? Or maybe he did it because he had felt that he had done so much for Joseph. I don't know. But here's Joseph in Genesis 40, and he is now in jail. But he still knows that the Lord is with him. He still feels the Lord's presence. And that's what we have to do. We can't, as Christians, a lot of people think that we should be happy all the time. No matter what goes wrong in our life, it's fine. We get an F on a report, or we get a D on our report card, or lie to our parents, or something else, that we should just be happy all the time. And that's not true. We should be peace. We should try to understand things. But there's a lot of things that we don't have control in. But guess who does? You guessed it, God does. He has control over those situations. And so we need to just relax and breathe and know no matter what the situation is, that God is in control. We're in a crazy situation right now, and now it's gone maybe a little bit longer than you kids maybe wanted it to go, and even some adults. And we still don't know for sure when everything's going to end, but we want everybody to be safe. So I'm for, if it takes us a little bit longer, then that's fine too. We can keep talking with each other. The important thing is to remember God has a plan for every single one of us. Whether you believe in the Lord right now, or you're just thinking about it, or maybe this is the first time you ever heard about God and truly understand anything about God, he always has a plan. He created us with a plan. when he molded us all together and gave us the color of our hair and the shape of our ears and our nose and our mouth and our body and our brain, he had a plan. And so he's hoping that his plan comes out, but he still gives us that option of choices. And just like I talked about last week, we have choices if we're the big brother or the big sister, that we have a choice whether we're going to say, that's not fair, or I have to do this. Why don't somebody else have to do it? Because there is a lot of responsibility, but the responsibility is for the whole family. It's just not for you to do it that one way of that. But the Lord took care of Joseph because Joseph goes into jail, not a good place to go, and he makes friends with the guy that's in charge of the whole jail. So he makes friends with him, and because he makes friends with him, he starts giving him responsibilities. And it's the same thing as when Potiphar bought him and he saw something in him. This guy in jail, the guy that's in charge of all the jails, probably has to be down there, go through the muck, listen to everybody's moaning and groaning, smell that stinky food and the stinky men and women that might be in the jail. But he sees something in Joseph. And so he then gives him authority. And as Joseph grows and he shows what he has, maybe it's the compassion for the other people, maybe it's a better way to do things, then he gets more and more authority. And it goes back again to just like Potiphar. Potiphar didn't worry about it once Joseph got into plans and started giving them authority over different things. The jail was the same way. So there's a pattern there that God has a plan. And here you are doing the same thing again. Now, this might be a little bit hard for some of you younger kids to understand. There's so many different aspects of this, and that's a big word right there. But the thing of it is to remember is God always, always has a plan, no matter what it is, one way or the other. So when you go to Genesis 40, when he's in jail, the king's baker and the king's cook are thrown into jail because the king got mad at him for something. So if you want to read ahead into 40, and you're going to see some dreams in 40 and 41, and maybe a little bit farther than that, you'll see how Joseph again interprets these dreams. He's not having these dreams necessarily, or he maybe is. You need to read and check that out. I want you to be able to read it and understand. Remember, I've told you, if you read something in the Bible and I'm saying it wrong, you have my permission to gently show me, well, my Bible says this or my Bible says that. I am not perfect and we want to make sure that everybody understands God's word. Okay? So it's a little bit shorter lesson today. A lot of things are going to be happening. We're going to probably ask you to draw the two dreams that are coming up in jail when Joseph is there. They're going to be interpreted. And then there's another one with the king at the same time. So we're going to talk about dreams. So next week, or this week, because Sunday starts the beginning of the week, maybe you could send me a short note or have your mom send me a text or an email or do it in Kids Messenger. Maybe there's a certain dream that you have a lot of times. Do you dream in color or do you dream in black and white? Do you remember your dreams? I don't always remember my dreams. I definitely can't remember if they're in black and white or color. But sometimes I remember them real well, and sometimes I don't. So just think about it. Send me a note, Kids Messenger, Facebook, text through mom and dad. Make sure you do everything, even Kids Messenger. Make sure you let mom and dad or grandma and grandpa know exactly what you're doing. So, did you wish your mom a happy Mother's Day today? Did you wish your grandmother a happy Mother's Day? Is there a woman in your life that is like a mom to you? And did you wish them a happy Mother's Day? I wish all of the women to have a happy Mother's Day because there's some mothers that don't have children, but they are mentors or mothers to so many people. You and I know that there's different ladies in your life that you can talk to that maybe you can't talk to your mom about. And that's okay to a point. But you should wish them because you're like a mom, and you should wish them a happy Mother's Day too. I want you to remember and look up Psalms 34, okay? And I want you to look for these words. But those who seek the Lord shall not lack any good thing. Joseph sought the Lord, and he did not lack any good thing. Maybe your definition of a good thing might be different than Joseph's, but he didn't lack anything, and he relied on the Lord for everything that he received. So I'm hoping that you got your Mother's Day project done, your secret project. And I'm hoping that you'll help mother or grandmother, whomever it may be, and it might be even a dad, because I know lots of kids that are being raised by their dad. So let's recognize them on Mother's Day too, because why not? They're being a mother, if they're doing cooking and laundry, not to say that's all mothers do, but just say you should recognize them all. I'm sorry, my nose is really itchy today. Just recognize all of them. And I sent out a would you rather to everybody. And next Friday night at 7 p.m. is our kids' Zoom meeting. And so hopefully I can see a bunch of you there. We're going to be sending it out to everybody, and maybe we'll find some kids from another city or even another state that might come in and be talking. I'm also going to be calling your parents and see if I can talk to you on the phone. I've done this with a couple of you kids already, and it was fun, but I want to try to connect with everybody so I can hear your voice. Okay? So happy Mother's Day. May the Lord be with you today. And I love you all, and we will soon see each other. I promise that. Bye.